This is the Corsair FRAME 4000D, and the case is modular in some interesting ways. For example, the motherboard tray can do this. That's the motherboard tray. Also, the power supply shroud and tray can come out on its own. We just need to get to it first. So there is the power supply shroud. And that is what gets us to the name frame for the case. It is, there was a loose part in there. I found it, it's okay. Everything's under control here. It's a frame of a case, and it can be reconfigured. And it's actually pretty well built. There's some really good build quality to this case. The fan rail system at the front behind the, as they call it, 3D Y-shaped patterns. This is actually, though, a very strong front panel. It looks like it would be kind of like a held together by spaghetti or something, but because there's actual depth to this, marketing memes of calling it 3D aside, it does support itself well. And then the steel stamping for the cable management shroud area, that's also relatively high build quality. And the reason we're excited about this is because Corsair lately has really sucked with some of its cases, but this one doesn't. So that's encouraging. You can tune into our next case review for backhanded compliments by Gamers Nexus. They don't know whether to put it on the marketing page or not. Gotta include the full quote. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duronaut thermal paste. Thermal Grizzly claims its Duronaut paste is intended for long-term stability and endurance, focusing on paste longevity in addition to the usual performance focus. Thermal Grizzly's Duronaut paste comes with applicators and spreaders, and ships in numerous tube sizes, aiming to provide a high-end paste for PC builds and daily driven overclocks by enthusiasts. Learn more at the link in the description below. I need to reassemble this for the rest of the review, but in addition to the modularity, the case also has trademarks. The new InfiniRail TM fan mount is joined by Corsair's 3DY pattern airflow pattern. And other than patterns, better yet, Corsair says that this case is, quote, 50 series ready, end quote. Which is impressive, mostly because not even NVIDIA was 50 series ready. This is the Corsair FRAME 4000D though, and overall we like it. It's an interesting case. So this case is the successor to Corsair's highly popular and long-lived 4000D. So there's the 4000D Airflow on the table next to me. This was $80 when it came out, and this one we also liked. Corsair has had a kind of mixed history with cases over the last several years, but this has been one of the standouts, and the FRAME 4000D is trying to follow that up. Now, we first reviewed the 4000D back in 2020, but the FRAME 4000D, in spite of the name, is an entirely new design, which means we're going to have to say FRAME 4000D every single time we mention it, and we can't shorten it to just 4000D. That's a different case. We suspect part of the reason for the similarity is to enable the classic reuse the old new egg listing trick. Those 1,000 plus 5 egg reviews are almost all for the original 4000D, not the FRAME 4000D, but it gets to share them on the same listing. This is one of those situations where we're not sure whether you blame the player or you blame the game, but either way, it's just kind of, it's just really not how reviews are supposed to work of products. Like they're supposed to be for different ones. Corsair also occasionally refers to the FRAME 4000 series sans D, which means we probably will see a FRAME 4000X at some point. The case ranges from $95 without fans to $110 for the RS variant with 3 ARGB fans. There's a middle step as well without ARGB. We were talking to Corsair, it sounds like these prices might go up, with the tariffs being the reasoning for that. We don't have hard numbers yet for what they might go up to. Our understanding is that they will probably go up. This case, though, it's interesting because one of the most different things they've done with it is punched gigantic holes into the front panel, which is gonna help with airflow. I mean, they're very close to just having no front panel at all with how huge these holes are. The differentiating factor for the FRAME 4000D is that it's intended to be modular, with users able to buy or 3D print alternative components. This is reiterated constantly in Corsair's marketing materials, including the public blog posts. Quote, Frame is all about customization, and we have some exciting things on the horizon. In addition to parts that will be available for direct purchase, they say, we have modeled some blanks of the PSU shroud and the motherboard tray, so you can download these from printables and customize them however you like, end quote. Now, currently there's not a ton of options out there, but it's an interesting idea. Let's get into the build quality and the actual case. The rotatable vertical GPU mount comes to mind first. It's one of 3 major features that genuinely live up to Corsair's promise of modularity. The other 2 being the power supply shroud and the motherboard tray, which can be removed with 4 screws. This is vital. Being able to eventually buy or print individual components is nice, but it doesn't have anything to do with the case's design. With these three features, we're comfortable saying that the Frame 4000D is more modular than a typical case. It's also possible to swap the glass and mesh side panels to either side of the case, but this won't be useful until Corsair sells side panels individually or introduces more case SKUs. The vertical GPU mount is surprisingly quick to set up. By loosening 2 thumb screws around the expansion slot covers, the entire set of 7 slots can be removed and rotated 90 degrees. A riser cable can then be installed and supported by 2 standoffs installed on the surface of the power supply shroud. Using the built-in mounting holes, a maximum of 3 vertical slots are usable. Obviously, Corsair intends for you to purchase a Corsair riser cable because Corsair. But if you want to use your own, the holes are spaced 122 millimeters apart so you can size it out. The Frame 4000D has old school pop-out fill and drain ports at the top and bottom of the chassis, which we actually really appreciate. Open loop compatibility fits well with the modular philosophy that Corsair is pushing. So far, these things are good, but if we're picking antiquated hills to die on, it's going to be paper manuals. So this is our hill, and we've planted our paper manual flag into it. We'd like to see a paper manual included with the case in addition to the version on Corsair's blog. The benefit of the online guide is that it can be updated. For example, the online manual now explains what the point of the strip of Mylar in the accessory kit is, whereas it didn't always, and we had to email Corsair originally to check. And if you're wondering, it covers the reverse connector holes in the motherboard tray when they're unused. But paper manuals are not only just more convenient for building a computer when you might not have one to do searching, they also, from a consumer standpoint, stamp and date what you were told as a consumer and help prevent companies from gaslighting you. So this is actually the main reason we prefer them. But then again, maybe Corsair doesn't deserve paper manuals, since its own digital manual incorrectly lists the screw count and steps for removing the power supply shroud. With a digital manual, they can make as many mistakes as they want, and the only people who will know about them is everyone who saw this video. For the record, it's 3, not 2. The diagram is also incorrect, and so is the text. Won't get into this too far today, but having just a hard copy of what you were told the product is compatible with, it's always a nice thing as a consumer protection. Now, there's another larger piece of black Mylar in the kit, but the manual devotes less explanation to this one, simply saying that if you, quote, don't want your cables visible through the bottom mesh quarter panel, swap the translucent insert for the color-matched blank-out insert included in the accessory box, end quote. The case also has a Lian Li-ish strip of mesh ventilation below the glass side panel, and it ships with the translucent insert. If you install fans in the 2 120mm slots on top of the power supply shroud, we'd recommend getting rid of the inserts entirely. The Frame 4000D uses the so-called InfiniRail system. At the front of the case, there are 2 metal rails that hold up to 12 plastic clips. The rails slide in and out for 120mm or 140mm mounting, and the clips slide up and down the whole length of the rails. Technically, the rails can fit 200mm fans at their maximum width, but only by foregoing the clips and mounting directly to the rails. At the top of the case, Corsair took the simpler approach of using a single sliding rail and no clips. The system is more complicated than it strictly needs to be, but our only real complaint is that there are exactly 12 clips included with the base model Frame 4000D, with no spares in case one breaks. The only significant fit and finish issue with our review sample was that one of the plastic pieces of the ball snap fasteners had popped out of the chassis in shipping. We were able to find it and put it back. But just like the InfiniRail clips, Corsair didn't provide any extras, and we have seen other manufacturers do this. As for the build quality, the construction of the Frame 4000D feels more delicate than the original Frame 4000, and a lot of that is just the nature of punching all this ventilation and these holes in it, where we don't really get that same sturdy feel. But it's a trade-off, and we'll test that in the thermal section. It's a more breathable mesh pattern. It has flexible fan mounting, and it has removable components, and all of these things get exchanged for that rigidity. Corsair apparently intends to sell Frame 4000D components individually as well, but we didn't see any on the store at the time of writing this. That may change by the time this goes up. On the positives for build quality, the elaborate stamped 3D pattern on the front panel is much sturdier than it looks. We'll have thermal results later in this review, but the Frame 4000D's front panel appears more open than the 4000D airflows, while retaining most of its rigidity, which is because of that 3D design to it. There's a cable cover at the front of the case that can be installed in one of 2 positions, but as is frequently the case, we were only able to use it in the forward position because of the ATX power cable. The other position is better suited to back connect motherboards, of which Asus, BTF, MSI Project Zero, and Gigabyte Project Stealth have been validated by Corsair to work. The cable cover is extremely easy to remove, requiring only a single screw, and it's equally easy to slot the side fan mount from the accessory kit into place. The side fan mounts is another feature that'll become interesting if Corsair introduces a Frame 4000X or other variant with a sealed front panel. On to cable management, it's good with tons of Velcro straps behind the motherboard tray, but the best route for the 24-pin cable is along the cable bar, which isn't an option if the side fan mount is installed instead. Front I/O cables are neatly sleeved and the whole I/O unit pops off with 2 screws, so it would have been nice to allow alternate mounting locations like the O11D Evo, especially since having the I/O at the bottom of the case has become unusual these days. Even still, we like the modularity of it. They are delivering on that. As for storage, drives can be mounted on 2 plates, one behind the motherboard tray and one under the power supply shroud. Each plate can mount either 2 2.5-inch drives, one 3.5-inch drive, or one IQ Link system hub controller. We'll be interested to see whether Corsair comes up with a modular solution to fit more drives, but for now, that's it. Now, the cable cover moves, and the default location of the GPU support arm is the cable cover. So if you move the cable cover to its outward position, then really, with that default location, the only GPUs the GPU support arm will support will be the largest ones. Now, those are the ones that most need the support, but there are still extremely heavy, sag-worthy cards that are shorter and still 3 to 4 slots these days. Now, it can be moved a step further back by using the mini mount in the accessory kit, but there's no way to do any finer adjustment, and you should look for a different solution if you really think your GPU needs that support. Appearances are subjective. We never really get into these too much, but just to point a few things out and let you decide. One of the biggest differences between the Frame 4000D and the 4000D in terms of looks is them. The looks. It doesn't have the same clean and uninterrupted lines of the original 4000D. If that's what you like, then this is obviously a completely different look. And we'll leave that up to, this is really reflecting my voice. We'll leave that up to you whether or not, I don't know if it picks up on the mic, but I can hear the ringing in my ears. We'll leave it up to you whether that matters or not. But the point being that other than getting rid of the reflective shield here, this case has a much sort of cleaner look. So if you're into that minimalism, I guess, lifestyle, then the frame is a lot different. But it should breathe better. So as for the looks, we'll let you decide on that. It's up to you. We don't really care about the subjective stuff that much. We do care about the thermals, though, and that's what we're getting into now, is the thermals and the performance. So this is the base model Frame 4000D, but we had Corsair send fans along so we could test one of the slightly more expensive models as well. Corsair sent a pack of 3 RS 120 ARGB fans. We used these to match the stock configuration of the $110 Frame 4000D RS ARGB, which is how the case is marked on our charts. According to Corsair's spec sheets, the ARGB fans have the same specs as regular RS 120s. So these results are also representative of the $100 Frame 4000D RS non-ARGB's performance. And with that, let's get into the thermal testing. We'll start with noise-normalized thermals when using our hemi-anechoic chamber to establish the noise levels. Under full load with the case fans adjusted to hit our 27 dBA noise normalization target, CPU temperature in the Frame 4000D averaged 43 degrees Celsius above ambient, or 47 degrees on just the P cores. That's a significant improvement over the original 4000D Airflow's average of 49 degrees, or 53 on the P cores. But that's to be expected, since the older case has only 2 fans and splits them between the front and the rear of the case. Relative to the rest of the chart, the Frame 4000D performed fairly well here. The Fantex XT Pro Ultra is comparable in price and in design, but it split the difference between the Corsair cases, with the Frame 4000D still a couple degrees cooler. The LandCool 207 remains the budget case to beat, with averages of 41 degrees across all cores and 45 on the P cores, while the NZXT H5 Flow 2024 and the Fantex G400A performed similarly well. The G400A remains difficult to find in the US. Moving to GPU thermals under full load in the same noise-normalized test, the Frame 4000D averaged 45 degrees above ambient, with 49 degrees for the memory and 59 for the unshown GPU hotspot. That's another victory over the original 4000D Airflow, which averaged 49 degrees for GPU temperature, but again, that's with 2 fans to the Frame 4000D's 3. The G400A effectively tied the Frame 4000D in this test, while the H5 and XT Pro Ultra didn't do as well. The XT Pro Ultra averaged 47 degrees for the GPU, a couple degrees warmer than the Frame 4000D. The LandCool 207 remains near the top of the chart for cooling. And to learn more about that one, which is worth learning about if you're looking at this price class, You can check out our best cases roundup from last year or our original review for more information on that case's pros and cons. At full speed, the Frame 4000D's CPU thermal performance continues to scale fairly well for its price, while the 4000D Airflow falls further behind. The Frame 4000D's noise levels and performance were essentially tied with the Phanteks XT Pro Ultra here, with the Frame 4000D averaging 40 degrees above ambient, or 43 on the P cores. The G400A performed similarly as well, but with a lower 37 dBA noise level to the Frame 4000D's 43 dBA, while the LANCool 207 remains an outlier with both lower temperatures and lower noise levels, making it a lot better here than really most of these other cases. The standardized fan test has always been of limited usefulness, but this is one of the places where it's useful. It'll help us evaluate the Frame 4000D's unusual front panel by comparing it against other cases with an identical set of fans and placements, including the 4000D. Average all-core CPU temperature was 40 degrees above ambient, and the P-cores were 44 degrees. That's reasonably well matched to established mesh-fronted cases like Fractal's Meshify 2 Compact and North XL. And it's extremely close to Silverstone's recent Farah 514X. The Frame 4000D is also significantly better than the 4000D Airflow when normalizing to the same set of fans, reinforcing Corsair's improvements to the chassis design itself. No matter how open the front panel is, though, the fans still have to pull air through Corsair's filter, so it makes some sense that single-layer mesh designs like the LANCool 207, the Pop Air RGB, and the Flux Pro perform slightly better here at least. Although the G400A also did fairly well, and it has 2 layers. In the same test, GPU temperature in the Frame 4000D averaged 43 degrees above ambient, tying it with most of the cases we just mentioned, the LANCool 207, the Pop Air RGB, and the Flux Pro, while the XT Pro Ultra did unusually poorly with an average of 50 degrees. As a side note, GPU thermals with the 4000D Airflow were abysmal in this particular test relative to the rest of the chart, and that differs from what we saw 5 years ago using our old test hardware, which demonstrates the value of retesting those cases now that we've switched to completely different components with the flow-through GPU design specifically. As a final note, the VRVCC sensor for the FETs averaged 30 degrees above ambient in the noise-normalized test with the Frame 4000D. That puts it at the cooler end of what we typically see from cases, with only a couple of outliers like the LANCool 207 and Flux Pro dropping to the 27 degree mark. The same goes for the SPD Hub average of 24 degrees above ambient, which is the RAM temperature, with relatively few cases on the chart dipping below 22. Both these sensors indicate normal internal case temperatures. So the SKUs for these cases, they're kind of packed tightly together. It's a $15 range between the cheapest and the most expensive. And we do think getting the 3 fans for an extra $5, that makes sense. The ARGB part, that's up to you, but they should perform the same from a thermal standpoint. So, as for things we'd still like to see, we need Corsair to follow through with more modular case components, like the alternative front panels it showed in the trailer, to make it really interesting. Or at the absolute least, offer some more printable files. For competitors, the Li & Li LANCool 207 remains king in terms of min-maxed price to performance, but the Frame 4000D is a reasonable alternative to budget Phanteks cases like the G400A and the XT Pro Ultra, or potentially some Montech cases, which we'll be adding more of to the charts shortly. As a successor to the existing 4000 series, we like the Frame 4000D functionally. Some of the finer attention to detail elements like the geometric patterns and yellow accents remain, just with a more complex appearance than previously. Corsair may have to increase prices on this. It's told us as much. We don't know what that's going to be too. Right now, we can judge it based on the pricing we have. So, and then if it goes up, I mean, presumably pretty much everything's going up. We'll have to likely totally reevaluate it at that point because some companies will hold lower prices, some will have to increase. So we'll have to look at that separately. You can't guess at it. But it does have stiff competition. So the Li & Li LANCool 207 is one of the sort of fiercest fighters, alternatives to this case, but the Frame 4000D is on our short list of recommendations, things to look at in what is currently the $100 plus or minus market. Now, we absolutely do not encourage any kind of panic buying, especially if you might need that money in the near future anyway. If, however, you have decided you're going to buy a computer case and you like this one, our recommendation, if you're gonna buy it no matter what, like you have a build on the horizon and it's imminent, would be to not wait, just because they have told us that it is probably going to increase in price. But again, exercise that sort of that judgment of how much you really want it. I mean, it's like anything right now where more than ever, our buying advice is if you think you might need the money for something that's not a computer later, as much as it hurts our business, if that's the right thing for you to do to save it, because you might need it for something else, then save the money. But again, we like the case overall, so if it's on the imminent buy list, then sooner than later is likely better because they have set the prices almost certainly going up. So that's it for this one. There's a lot of good alternatives. We have covered some of them in this review, like in the thermal section, but this is an overall job well done by Corsair. It is a much better return to form as compared to something like the 6500D last year. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. We've actually just posted a new behind-the-scenes update on Patreon, and I posted a Patrons Ask GN episode over there, so you can check that out and support us at the same time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.